Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I'm your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon, and I'm happy to be here with you today on July 28th. It's about 10 a.m., and I wanted to review the week that we've just had. I know, most Americans are on vacation right now. We're currently packing up our studio to move, but I had to stop and actually talk about this week. It has been amazing the amount of failures that we have seen from progressives, from the news media. It's just stunning. We'll explain what we mean in our conversation in just 1 second. We do want to mention, if this is the first time that you're seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We want you to know that every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you to hear what you have to say about the issues that matter, because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to be able to speak about the issues that affect all of us across the globe. And we hear your voice every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's get into the long-form conversation about what's happened this week. I think it's important to really take a look. This has been a week of failure after failure from the progressive ideology being imposed on the American people. And it's kind of sad to see in how many ways the progressive ideology being pushed by many Democrats is affecting every one of us and has hurt our nation, not helped it. Let's start with something that you've heard about. Carlee Russell, who was supposedly abducted back on July 13th and then resurfaced on July 15th. A lot of people had questions about this case. It didn't make a lot of sense. She was abducted on the side of a road after calling 911 to say that there was a toddler on the road, and she just disappeared. And this was a scary moment. It got national attention. Again, she got national attention. And after she was found, we started to hear very interesting stories, like this one from Rolling Stone, where we hear 2 days she was missing, and it's a conspiracy theory. People who had doubts, who had questions about the case, about a toddler on the side of the road, but no evidence of a toddler, of the phone call that she made, and yet the evidence on tracking her phone didn't match up with what she was saying. There were a lot of questions immediately about the story, kind of like Jussie Smollett. Immediately, the story had questions. It had holes. It didn't make sense. But that didn't stop people like Rolling Stone from coming out and telling you that if you had a question from C.T. Jones, it was on July 18th of 2023. What did they say? But in 48 hours, Russell was missing. The nationwide manhunt for the woman shifted into a conspiracy free-for-all online. Conspiracy free-for-all for doubting aspects of this story. Hashtags related to Russell's case had over 155 million views on TikTok, a number that continues to grow daily because TikTok is a news reporting system. Okay. With speculative videos using the related hashtags far outpacing actual news, like most news stories, like most issues these days. There are accounts desperately trying to enhance the footage of her car pulling over. Influencers have using her story as a cautionary tale, and even more alleging without evidence that the young woman was either abducted by a calculating trafficking ring or planned the whole thing as an elaborate hoax for attention. So we see very clearly that Rolling Stone had a very definitive opinion as they go on to in their piece, that if you were doubting what happened to Carlee, well, then you were part of a conspiracy. You're part of the problem. That was the issue. You had to believe her because she's a woman and she's a black woman. So there is no doubt, because that's the progressive mindset. Believe all women, believe all black women, do not question them. It must be the truth. Just like you must believe Jussie Smollett. And all gay men, all gay black men, because there cannot be questions or doubt. It wasn't a conspiracy. In fact, Carlee, the Alabama woman who claimed to be abducted on the side of a road, was in fact lying. None of it was true. Not one aspect of the story was true. We see that she confessed that she fabricated the kidnapping. This is 12 days after she disappeared. Carlee Russell told the detectives that she was kidnapped by a man who emerged from the trees near her car when she got out to check on a child. She described being blindfolded and taken into a house where she was forced to get undressed. The next day, Russell added, she managed to escape and ran through the woods until she emerged near her house. And the police knew the story was a hoax. This was a hoax. It was a lie. And the money, $63,000 that were raised immediately to be able to help her, to get her back home, to search for her, to prosecute those who actually committed the crime, $63,000. And as reported by WFLA TV on July 24th, 4 days ago, you're not getting your money back. If you supported the efforts to try and find Carlee Russell, if you supported the effort to try and bring her supposed human traffickers to justice, you lost your money. Initially, the money was being returned to those who made the donations to Crime Stoppers. And then there was a reversal. Mere hours after initially reporting that the money was going to be returned to those who had donated it, was reversed. And you have to actively ask for your money back, to request it, because the money is going to be kept. Perhaps the most audacious part of this entire story, besides the fact that we see that having questions about it, for daring to question a black woman, to dare question a specious story of abduction, Carlee Russell lied. But we must believe black women. Again, Ernest Owens says today, it doesn't matter that this isn't true. You have to believe women. You have to believe black women. And this is an op-ed. Ernest Owens said this. And as you can see here, the op-ed states, we must believe black women and prioritize their safety, even if it's not in danger, even if it's not a question, despite Carlee Russell's lies. It's amazing because we know this was a hoax. And in the article, Teen Vogue goes on to say, it's easy to understand why Russell's lie was so hurtful to those in her community. In a society where black women are already often not believed, and where missing black women don't often get the outrage and attention they deserve, it must have felt like the ultimate betrayal for her to get the attention that so many who look like her have been denied. Now, there's a lot of presuppositions in this story. It's not that women are abducted across America on a daily basis, which is an important issue. It's not that there's human trafficking, otherwise known as slavery, that is happening around the world and in the United States, which is an important story. No. It's because she's black, because she's a woman, then everything else goes out the window, and you have to stop everything you're doing. You cannot think critically. You must just obey. You just must accept everything that is told to you, blindly and without question. See, that's a problem. That should be a problem for everyone, because we need to evaluate each and every story. We have to make sure that we're doing everything for everyone. Otherwise, we would be punishing people and groups of people, just like with Jussie Smollett, because of the color of their skin, their political preference, because of ideology, rather than facts that exist. See, that goes hand in hand with believe all women, believe all black women without question, without any further critical thinking. In the article from Teen Vogue, they go on to say, let's call out racial and gender double standards How many times have white people, cis people, and men screwed up and not had it ruin the support they collectively deserve? So this op-ed, this Teen Vogue, they're saying it's okay. She lied to the American people. She lied internationally. She made up a hoax, and it's okay. She just screwed up. Anyone would do that. Anyone could have possibly made this mistake of completely creating a hoax, lying to the American people, because we've seen Jussie Smollett do it, and he has gotten off relatively scot-free. So she could too. And so Teen Vogue says, no, this is about white people. This is about people's sexual preference. This is about men, and they're being toxic. What does that have to do with the hoax at hand? You are the problem. You're not obeying. The news media told you this happened. You can't question it. If you have any other thoughts, well, that's a conspiracy theory, and you are the problem. Now, let's be clear. These cases, and they don't get enough attention. I agree. Whether it's a woman or a man or a child, whether they're black or white or Hispanic or Asian or anything else, a lot of these stories don't get enough attention. But many of them do. And we have to look at each and every one of these cases individually and say, it's not about whether they're black or not. Is this a crime? And is there a way to solve this? Is there a way to resolve this? But the progressives don't look at it that way. Going from Rolling Stone magazine to NPR, going over to Teen Vogue, this is about obey. The media said, this is a black woman, you have to obey. This is a woman, you have to obey. You have to believe whatever they have said. You cannot think about this, because if you do, you are the problem. They're trying to change the story. It's not about a black woman. This is about your gender preference. This is about the color of your skin. This is about being a man and being toxic. We should pay attention to these stories. We should help people, but we should also look at the situation and say, there's a question here. There's a problem here. You see, if we're critically thinking about it, then we can say, well, here's the root cause. Let's fix the problem. But we're hearing from the progressives, you're not supposed to find the root cause. You're not supposed to try and fix this. You're supposed to just obey, have emotions, and just agree with the supposed leaders and do whatever they say. Just obey. Allow the problem to continue without a solution and just keep them in power. That's ultimately the problem with the Carlee Russell case. That's dangerous. That's the part of the story that isn't getting a lot of attention. And I think that's the part of the story we need to focus on. Look at what else progressives have been doing. Because they don't get a lot of attention when they're shown for the problems that they are. How about this? Stacey Lawton, a transgender individual who was elected to New Hampshire state representative, was arrested for child porn. You didn't hear about this story. This was not a national news story. The Department of Justice charged Stacey Lawton with child exploitation. That was a week ago. You didn't hear about this story. This wasn't national news. No one was paying attention to this. There is a criminal history going back to 2008. No one cared about this. You didn't get to hear about this. Eric Swalwell, Representative Eric Swalwell, campaigned to get this individual elected in 2022. Now, where's the problem with this? There's several levels of problem with this. Besides the fact that Eric Swalwell, we know, is a compromised individual. Eric Swalwell has been compromised long before 2021. We knew for a fact that he has been involved with Chinese spies, and that's going back to the fact that he's involved with the Confucius Institute, a network of spy agencies in our colleges right now. And that's a problem all its own. But when we look at this, you really didn't hear about this story. No one in the major news media wants to talk to you about this. This is, and I will do a live update here with you, and you can see, while we are seeing news about this today from NBC News, the local affiliate in Boston, talking about this an hour ago, we can see that there are local news coverage of this. But looking back a week ago, looking at this story, you know who you don't see in this news coverage? Where's MSNBC? Where's CNN? Where's ABC? Where's the New York Times? They have nothing to say about this. They ignored this. Eric Swalwell, an individual who is in the United States Congress, backed this individual without doing any background research for the mere fact that this individual is transgender and running for an elected office as a progressive and Democrat, and that was good enough for him. And that should be good enough for you. Eric Swalwell, the Democratic Party, put their full faith and confidence behind an individual they didn't background check. Not at the local level, not at the national level. They just said, obey. This is an individual who's trans. Equity says that they're the top category. Nothing else needs to be checked. No other details are important for voters. You just have to accept this individual. Where's the background check? Who looked at this individual running for elected office in the Democrat and progressive offices of New Hampshire? Who did their background check? No one. They just said, this person's trans. You have to elect them. Don't think about it. Don't ask questions. Just obey. We said they're good enough. In fact, Eric Swalwell said, good enough. Forgetting the fact that Eric Swalwell himself is compromised. That Eric Swalwell himself has been a potential leak of national security information. No, just obey. Just do what progressives say. Don't think about it. Don't think critically. Just accept that whatever they have said is good enough for you. And if you don't do that, you're the problem. Again, you're the problem. I want to show you this. Also, this week, July 26th, we see that there was a hearing to nominate federal judges in the United States government. This is a very important issue. I'm going to show you. This is during a Senate hearing. This is Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, as he is reviewing the history of the Biden-Harris nominee for a federal office, a federal judicial nomination. I'm going to show you the abbreviated version.
Judge Mahalchak, you remember a case called Yentzer v. Potter County, and you were reversed, is that right? The higher court said you incorrectly analyzed qualified immunity and you incorrectly cited the 11th Amendment. Do you remember a case called Myers v. Clinton County Correctional Facility? And you were reversed in that case too, weren't you? Do you remember a case called Dennis v. Sheridan? And you were reversed in that case too? The higher court said you were wrong. Do you remember a case called Shania v. East Pennsboro? You were reversed in that case too, were you not? Do you remember a case called Spanier v. Libby? The president of Pennsylvania State University was convicted of covering up child sex abuse crimes. You let him go, and the Third Circuit reversed you, is that right? Well, the Third Circuit said you failed to cite, analyze, or properly apply the relevant case law.
You reversed my decision, yes.
Okay. Do you remember a case called Hassel v. Centric Bank? You were reversed, weren't you? Do you remember a case called Ramsey v. Amtrak? The higher court reversed you in that case too, didn't they? So you were reversed in part. You remember a case called McCracken v. Fulton County? You were reversed in that case too, weren't you? You remember a case called Bird v. Britton? And were you reversed in that case?
In part, yes.
You remember a case called Allen v. Lackawanna County Board of Commissioners? You were reversed in that case too, weren't you? You remember a case called Daniels v. Capital One Bank, and I believe you were reversed in that case too. Do you remember a case called Downey v. Pennsylvania Department of Corrections? Were you reversed in that case?
Yes, I believe I was.
Remember a case called Rejean v. Wenzel? Wetzel, were you reversed by a higher court there too? I don't have time to finish this list. I mean, it's longer than King Kong's arm here.
Truly shocking. Truly, truly shocking. Again, we see another case where the progressives and progressive ideology has failed the American people. But you're not supposed to think about that. That wasn't big news. A fact that one individual, a federal judicial nominee, was suddenly confronted with their record, well over 13 reversals, and this is considered the best case. This is a person who's being promoted. Why? Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. She's up because the Biden-Harris administration said, well, she's a woman. Therefore, you're not supposed to ask questions. You're not supposed to question her credentials or to review her history. And if you do, well, that's a conspiracy theory. It's because you're against women. You're a misogynist. Let's think about that for a moment. Is this really the most qualified person to be in the United States federal courts? Is this someone that we're supposed to allow to look at cases? She has failed repeatedly, misusing or misapplying various amendments, looking at case law, and every time, over and over again, complete reversals. The higher courts look at everything she's done and said, this is improper. She is applying progressive ideology, not the law. This is a classic example of what people call trying to legislate from the bench. You didn't see this story because you're not supposed to think about this. You're not supposed to consider what's happening and how it's impacting our lives. All of a sudden, because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, everything else goes out the window. We must believe all women. We must believe all women of color. We cannot question any aspect. And if you question anything, no matter what the foundation, no matter what the basis, you're the problem, according to the progressives out there. Well, what about what we saw later this week? How about on July 27th, as it was reported, Dianne Feinstein was in the United States Senate, and she's supposed to be voting. And instead of being able to vote, completely oblivious to what is going on around her, she's going into a speech and has to be told, and is told, what to say, how to act, because she has no idea what's going on. Now, I know you'll say, but Mike, that's just a Republican who's tweeting about it on X. And you know what? That's just Republicans editing, self-editing, and it's not real. Okay, let's go to NBC News. NBC News reported Senator Dianne Feinstein is told, just say aye. An awkward Senate committee moment. She's 90. She's delivering a speech when she's supposed to be giving a vote. And they clearly point out, instead of saying A or nay, voting yes or no, she decides to say, I want to give a speech. I want to tell you why I'm voting on this. One of the biggest parts of this entire article from NBC News, again, this is from the left. The part of the article that I think is most important and about the reporting that no one wants to talk about is Feinstein, 90, was later heard voting against another measure before she was corrected and again told to change her answer to yes. She has no idea what's going on. Dianne Feinstein is lost. She's just there as a puppet to say whatever the Democrats and progressives want her to say. She's just being propped up and walked through. She's missed 91 days in the Congress this year alone. And we know that she has had severe medical issues. But rather than allowing her to get medical attention, rather than letting someone else take her place, having a special election to get someone in who can properly represent the people of California, instead of doing that, no, what we are seeing are Democrats are taking advantage. Don't speak. You have no idea what's going on. Vote the way we want you to. Say yes. Just say yes. Oh, you voted no? Turn that around. Change your vote this is what you say. In fact, this is one of the reasons why we've seen so many Democrats like Representative Misha Maynor out of Georgia who decided they can't stay in the Democratic Party because they were being used as puppets. That the Democratic Party does not let anyone, especially women of color, to have their own voice, to have their own decisions, to be able to represent the people. Instead, they're there to represent the party, to vote on the party line. And because Representative Maynor was told, you shouldn't think, just obey, she left the Democratic Party. Dianne Feinstein, she's too old to do that for herself. She doesn't have the capability at 9, with all of her illnesses and maladies, to be able to stand up for herself. She doesn't have the strength or the capability, it would appear. And so instead, she's being puppeted around and told what to do and how to do it. It's rather upsetting, even as we see the Democrats are failing, that their policies, their ideology has failed on the federal level, on a personal level, on a national level, in ways that affect people's lives by getting accused sexual offenders into elected office, in denying members of elected office from doing their duty, their obligation to represent the people, in being able to propagate these hoaxes to be able to better manipulate elections and people's emotions, because you're the problem in every single case. If you mention that there's a problem, you are the problem. If you thought about this longer than the news media headline, you're the problem. There is U.S. lawmaker Representative Greg Casar, who decided that he was going to go on to a hunger strike to represent people in Texas. He's in the Texas 35th District. And he said, I'm going to go on to a hunger strike. He in fact said that he was going to be on a hunger and thirst strike as long as it was necessary, until a nurse would tell him it's bad for his health. He made it all of 8 to 9 hours. That's it. In other words, if you went to sleep last night, you woke up this morning, you had a full night of rest, you did the same thing he did. If you happen to be on one of those intermittent diets, one of those fasting diets that tens of millions of men and women do throughout this nation and around the world, if you've gone without eating or drinking for a day, even if you're religious, as we see many people do during Ramadan, they have done more than Representative Greg Casar in being able to stand up for their beliefs. I mean, this just shows you that he has absolutely no conviction, no serious belief. He went 9 hours, maybe 8 hours, or some news agencies are reporting 8 hours without food or water, about the equivalent of going to sleep. If you've been working and had a busy day and you didn't take lunch, you would be equivalent to what he did. And he said in a tweet, but he was energized for going less than 1 day, one working day, without food or water. It's amazing to me. I would call that a hoax in and of itself. That it wasn't a real hunger strike. It wasn't a real thirst strike. He didn't do anything that people don't do every day, not just in the United States, but around the world. There is a 30% food crisis that we have been talking about since 2022. Literally, from February of 2022, we have been warning people about the 30% less food in the world. Right now, Russia is putting an embargo on further grain and fertilizer shipments, meaning that food crisis will continue into 2024, possibly 2025. There are people around the world, like in Sri Lanka, that are starving. They are having food riots globally, not reported here in the United States because the news media doesn't care about the rest of the world. And this has been happening for a year, and he's talking about missing less than a day of food and water, that somehow this is a dramatic statement and he's energized by standing up against the oppression. What oppression? What statement has he made? Nothing. There are people who during Ramadan go longer than he has without food or water. There are people around the world starving to death for days and weeks. He didn't go anywhere near any of that. Literally, he couldn't make it through an entire business day. But again, you're not supposed to think about this. You're not supposed to question this. It's not ridiculous on its face, according to the mainstream news media, because they told you it's important, that he made a statement, that it's dramatic for him to have done what people do just on a diet to lose weight. But that's supposed to be a political statement. That's supposed to be significant to you and your life. That's supposed to show that he has solidarity with you. I don't agree. Again, it's showing the weakness of the positions of the progressives and Democrats, that they do not have a strong belief. Now, there may be rank and file Democrats that have strong beliefs. I don't doubt that. But not the elected officials. They're being paraded around and told that these puppets are supposed to say this to the American people, to pull the emotional heartstrings, that the news media will back them up, whether justified or not, like the Rolling Stone, like NPR, like what we're seeing with NBC News, that they are being excused over and over again, and you are not supposed to question it. You're not supposed to think about it. You're just supposed to say, great, human trafficking is a real issue, and it needs to be addressed with a real solution, which in part deals with the open door policy at our southern border that is ignored massively by the mainstream news media in hopes to prop up the 2024 presidential election. That's a fact. And that's part of the big problem with human trafficking, which was not addressed in dealing with Carol Lee Russell in Alabama. That's been obfuscated as the news media are trying to say, you're the problem for even questioning her because she's a woman. But let's not talk about the underlying problem of human trafficking inside and outside of the United States, because that means we have to talk about illegal immigration, our open border, and we have to come up with serious answers that do not fall in line with the Democratic Party. Don't think about it. We don't want to have that conversation. We don't want to have the conversation about Dianne Feinstein and individuals who have been in elected office for 30, 40, almost 50 years, who are so old today that, like Joe Biden, they have to have cue cards to tell them where to sit and who they need to speak to. And they have aides standing next to them, telling them what they're supposed to say and how they're supposed to vote, and to change their votes if they do something wrong that the party has not previously approved of. We have individuals who are being elected to office without being vetted, who are not being checked at all, merely because of their equity standing and because they have the right check boxes for the right categories. They get pushed into elected office even as we find out that they are criminals of the worst nature, not because they're trans, not because of their sexual gender or preference or their color of skin, but because they preyed on minors. They allegedly preyed on minors. And then we have individuals like Representative Greg Casar, who are out there lauding themselves, patting themselves on the back for doing something that tens of millions of Americans do every day, either because they're busy at work or because they're trying to lose a couple of pounds of weight. It is inconsequential, and yet he is using this as part of his re-election effort. It is lauded as if it were some outstanding Herculean superhuman action. He couldn't make it 24 hours without getting a Twinkie? I think these are this is an example. This entire week has been an example of the problem that is plaguing America. You're not supposed to think about the issues, and the news media doesn't want you to see most of what is happening in our nation and the consequences of what is happening in our nation. They are more than happy to blame you for daring to look at what is happening and say, that's unsatisfactory. There are problems here, and we're not trying to address the solutions. And if you dare to suggest there might be a solution, like term limits, like not re-electing individuals forever, like looking into the root causes of some of the problems facing our nation, like not valuing people based on their equity categories, but the character they have, and actually looking at their history, that looking at elected officials who have done the bare minimum and trying and not lauding them as if they have done some superhuman effort. Well, we're the bad guys for all of that. We're the bad guys. This is ridiculous. I understand it's the summer, and we're not supposed to pay attention to this. I understand we're in the middle of making a move, and we're not supposed to think about this. We're supposed to be so preoccupied with our lives that we do not stop and understand what is happening in our government and how it is affecting us. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think that Greg Cesar has done something impressive. Maybe you think that Dianne Feinstein is absolutely fantastic as a puppet being told what to say, when to say it, and how to vote. Maybe you think that it is absolutely normal and fine for individuals to be valued as a category, and that category is what is being elected to office rather than character and actually evaluating their histories. Maybe you think that the hoaxes that we have been seeing over and over again that have damaged individuals based on their gender, on their race, that it's okay. Because the bigger thing is just believe, blindly affirm. Maybe you believe that. We don't. But we would like to hear what you have to say. We look forward to seeing your comments. And we hope that you will join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to share your thoughts on these issues and everything else happening in the United States and around the world. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today.
Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, admitted he has not read the Arizona immigration law.
I know it is a difficult task to stand up in front of our peers and say to Congress and say that Congress has failed to listen to voters.
You here at CPAC said yes to President Donald Trump in 2016, and I know you're going to say yes to.
She was very aware that she had the flag in her hands and that the flag was dragging on the ground. That is an intentional action. She knows what she is doing. She then drops the flag. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, a representative in Congress who is writing laws to deny American citizens their rights, has no idea what she's talking about.
And they are against the vaccine mandate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you support that?
Last time I checked, there were not a lot of planes crashing into each other at airports, right? You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.
The quote from Joe Biden where he is admitting that he is willing to lie to the American people.